State and official visits to the United Kingdom are formal visits by the head of state of one country to the United Kingdom, during which the British sovereign acts as official host of the visitor. It is a royal event that involves the all assets in the civil service, the royal household and the household division. It also involves other members of the royal family and is centered in London, the national capital. Invitations for state visits are sent by the royal household with supervision by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. State visits do not formally occur between the United Kingdom and the 15 other Commonwealth realms, as the realms all share a common monarch and head of state. Visits conducted by the monarch to another Commonwealth realm are also not considered state visits but rather royal visits. In addition, official visits to the United Kingdom by another Commonwealth realm are typically performed by their respective Governor-General, who in that capacity are usually in the country for an audience with the Queen. One of the more notable as well as earliest instances of a state visit to the British Isle is the Grand Embassy of Peter the Great, which was a diplomatic mission to Western Europe in 1697 and 1698 led by Peter the Great of the Russian Empire. The modern pomp and ceremonial came about in the early 19th century. Examples of this new protocol in action included the Allied sovereign's visit to England in June 1814. Queen Victoria hosted Napoleon III for a state visit at Windsor Castle in 1855, although it consisted of more informal arrangements. Very few formal state visits to the country did not take place prior to the reign of Queen Elizabeth in the 20th century. One of those few state visits included one by Kaiser Wilhelm II during the reign of his uncle Edward VII in 1907. Historically, dignitaries would usually arrive at Gatwick Airport and take the royal train to Victoria Station. The Queen, typically accompanied by other members of the royal family, would greet them here and then lead them by carriage to Buckingham Palace. Today, most dignitaries arrive at London Heathrow Airport, although there are cases of visitors arriving at London Stansted Airport instead. They are usually greeted on behalf of the Queen by a member of the royal family and the UK Foreign Secretary. The dignitary and the monarch then ride down the wall in a state carriage, usually the 1902 state landau, escorted by the household cavalry with streetliners coming from the Foot Guards. Union flags and the flags of the visiting country are usually draped on both sides of the road. An arrival ceremony usually takes place on Horse Guards Parade, although there are also some instances where it takes place at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, with a guard of honor being provided by members of the Queen's Guard, usually found from one of the 5 regiments of Foot Guards, Grenadier Guards, Coldstream Guards, Scots Guards, Irish Guards, and the Welsh Guards. Prior to a welcoming ceremony at Windsor Castle, the state guest receives a welcome at Datchet Railway Station with the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment and its mounted band. Following the performance of the national anthems, first of the visiting country and then God Save the Queen, although the former is the sole piece that played most of the time, the commander of the Guard of Honor formation, usually a junior officer, will always report to the dignitary in the language of the visitor, with the report being along the lines of the following. Your Excellency, the Guard of Honor, provided by the state's name of unit, is formed up and ready for inspection. After the report, the selected band plays a slow march while the formation of company size is inspected. Depending on the area where the ceremony takes place, the march past will immediately take place following the inspection. If it takes place on Horse Guards Parade, then the foreign guest and the Queen travel to Buckingham Palace in a carriage procession escorted by a large number of mounted soldiers from the household cavalry. The welcome ceremony is accompanied by 21 gun salutes fired from Green Park in the Tower of London. Exceptions to this included Xi Jinping, who was received with a 41-gun salute in Green Park and a simultaneous 62-gun salute at the Tower of London and City of London, 103 guns in total. In recent years, Windsor Castle has hosted arrival ceremonies from President Thang Mbeki of South Africa, Abdullah II of Jordan, President Barack Obama and Margrethe II of Denmark. During the lattermost visit, the Guard of Honor was provided by the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment, a unit of which she is Colonel-in-Chief. Guards of honor have also been accorded for visiting dignitaries who are in the country on official or even working visits, including Soviet leaders Nikita Khrushchev and Mikhail Gorbachev in 1956 and 1989 respectively, as well as U.S. President Donald Trump in 2018. Upon returning home from the latter visit, Trump falsely claimed that the Queen, who accompanied him during his inspection of the 1st Battalion, Coldstream Guards at Windsor Castle, reviewed her honor guard for the first time in 70 years. Despite the fact that at the time she had only been sovereign for 65 years. The largest guard of honor to be formed up for a state visit was in 2003 during the visit of President George W. Bush and First Lady Laura Bush, when an arrival ceremony took place in the forecourt of Buckingham Palace, in which the household cavalry and the King's Troop were paraded in front of the visiting dignitaries. Dignitaries have an informal lunch with the Queen before viewing the royal collection's artifacts and exchanging gifts with the royals. After all royal meetings are held, the visitor then engages in meetings with leaders in Her Majesty's government, beginning with the British Prime Minister at 10 Downing Street. In many of these meetings, multi-million-pound business agreements are settled upon. Meetings are also held with the Leader of the Opposition, the leaders of all parties in the House of Commons, and members of the British Cabinet. In June 1978, Nicolae Ceausescu made a state visit to the UK where a £200 million licensing agreement was signed between the Romanian government and British Aerospace for the production of more than 80 BAC-111 aircraft, which was said to be at the time the biggest civil aircraft agreement between two countries. The visiting head of state, upon the Queen's request, may also be given the chance to give an address to both chambers of the British Parliament assembled on the halls of the House of Lords. She addresses members of both chambers on the importances of political, economic, and cultural ties shared by her home country with the millions of people of the United Kingdom. The joint speech is presided by the Speaker of the House of Commons in coordination with the Lord Speaker. The first foreign dignitary to undertake such a reception was French President Albert Lebrun in March 1939 and most recently was undertaken by Willem-Alexander of the Netherlands. Heads of state from over 70 countries have laid wreaths at the unknown warrior during state visits. State dinners are held at Buckingham Palace in London and on occasion at Windsor Castle in Berkshire, should the visitor stay there. Around 150 guests are invited to the white tie event at the ballroom in Buckingham Palace for the banquet, which is an area that has a max capacity of 170 diners. Guests typically members of the royal family, members of the visiting delegation, British politicians, and notable figures from both countries. Preparations of the state dinner are the responsibility of the master of the household and begin months in advance. The seating chart for the event is confirmed both by the Queen and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. During the dinner, honors and decorations of both heads of state are worn and both speeches are checked extensively by the Foreign Office. The preparation of food begins closer to the start of the dinner to ensure the food is still fresh by the time it reaches the table. This also means that every dish is prepared by hand from scratch. The meal spans over 4 courses that include fish, main course, pudding, and dessert. Each place setting has 6 glasses, for water, red and white wine, dessert wine, champagne, and port, and up to a dozen pieces of cutlery. The menu is chosen by the Queen from a choice of 4 presented by the royal kitchen. Alcoholic drinks come from the government wine cellar, while the food is prepared by chefs of the royal household. Large silver gilt dishes and vessels, both of which are never used during the ceremony, are arranged in tiers on the central table. Scotland is the most frequently visited constituent country in the UK during state visits. They are usually hosted by either the Queen or the First Minister of Scotland on this visit. When hosted by the Queen, the visitor stays at either Edinburgh Castle or Holyrood Palace. When hosted by the devolved executive government in Scotland, the visitor holds bilateral meetings at St Andrew's House. During the visit, a speech to the Scottish Parliament is given in the chamber, being broadcast on Parliament TV with the presiding officer of the Parliament being the host. Previous visits to the Parliament have included April 2018, President of Malawi Peter Mutharika. June 2016, Irish President Michael D. Higgins. March 2016, Ghanaian President John Mahama. March 2013, President of Malawi Joyce Banda. October 2007, President of Croatia Sajid Japan Mesic. January 2007, President Olafur Ragnar Grimsson of Iceland. November 2006, President-elect Kaczynski of Poland. July 2006, President Valdis Adamkus of Lithuania. July 2006, President Arnold Reutel of Estonia. November 2005, President Bingu Mutharika of Malawi. January 2005, President of Serbia and Montenegro Svetoslav Mirovic. February 2002, President Jorge Sampaio of Portugal. June 2001, President Thabo Mbeki of South Africa. May 2000, President Bakili Molozi of Malawi. September 2000, Ghanaian President Jerry Rawlings. The reigning monarch will usually host 1 or 2 states visits per year. The reigning monarch has hosted 152 state visits since becoming the head of state in 1952. Many controversies have arose from state visits to the United Kingdom, particularly in relation to the human rights record of the visitor. 1971, Emperor Hirohito of Japan undertook a state visit to the UK during a time in which anti-Japanese sentiment was ramped, partially due to the emperor's wartime status as head of state. As a result, he was greeted by angry veterans and former British POWs, who notably protested through standing in silence as his open horse-drawn carriage passed through London. Thousands of protesters lined the route to Buckingham Palace, with some turning their back and wearing red gloves to symbolize the British war dead. Others whistled Colonel Bogey by Kenneth J. Alford, which was a popular march during the war. During Hirohito's visit, the satirical magazine Private Eye used a racist double entendre to refer to the emperor's visit, "Nasty nip in the air." 1978, it was the first state visit by a communist head of state to the UK. Despite the Queen's public display of protocol, privately she had thought they had blood on their hands. As a result, she took steps to avoid meeting the both Ceausescus, with royal author Robert Hardman reporting that she decided the best course of action was to hide behind a bush rather than conduct polite conversation. The Queen also received a call from French President Giscard d'Estaing warning her with an account of their recent stay in Paris, during which the Romanians had looted their living quarters and had even hacked holes in the walls while searching for bugging devices. The day before Ceausescu's execution, he was stripped of his honorary GCB, Knight Grand Cross of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath, status and was returned the insignia of the Order of the Star of the Socialist Republic of Romania that Ceausescu had bestowed upon the Queen during the visit. 2003, protests occurred during the visit of President Vladimir Putin as human rights activists were against Russian involvement in the Second Chechen War. There were also outcries over Russian support for the Iranian nuclear program. During Putin's visit to Edinburgh, a protester was arrested after he ran in front of the president's motorcade along the Royal Mile. 2003, November 2003 marked the visit of George W. Bush to the UK, during which he was met with peaceful anti-war protests in London, attracting 100,000 to 200,000 people. The protests culminated in the toppling of an effigy at Bush in Trafalgar Square. One protester was arrested after attempting to throw an egg at the presidential motorcade. Up to £5 million was reportedly spent on beefing up security for the 4-day visit, which included calls for both Bush and Prime Minister Tony Blair to resign over the Iraq conflict. 2014, a few days after the visit, photographs produced by Amnesty UK showed cargo boxes that revealed that the Chinese embassy has been shipping in flags, hats, t-shirts, and other pro-China merchandise as diplomatic baggage in order to put on a show of strength and support for the visiting president. This was done to counter activists of Falun Gong in the Tibetan independence movement who convened to demonstrate against China's human rights abuses in Tibet Autonomous Region. In May 2016, Queen Elizabeth II was caught on camera making a remark that the Chinese were very rude to the ambassador during the visit and that it was bad luck for the Metropolitan Police Commander Lucy D'Orsi to be responsible for security during the event. Guarding the Queen, a documentary published by the BBC, covered the actions of the troops of the Household Division, which included the preparations for the state visit of the President of Ghana John Kufuor in 2007.